Greetings, fellow Cybertronians, and welcome to Transformers Comics Decoded, the show where I do a panel-by-panel breakdown of my Transformers comic book collection. I'm your host, Bartatron. We've got a lot to cover this episode, so let's roll out! The Transformers Spotlight Blurr. Cover A art by Casey Collar. Cover B art by Trevor Hutchison. Retail incentive sketch cover art by Guido Guidi. Written by Shane McCarthy. Art by Casey Collar. Colors by Joanna Lafuente. Letters by Neil Uyatake. Edits by Denton J. Tipton. He is the fastest Cybertronian alive. He is glorious, unbeaten, and adored by millions. His capacity for victory is matched only by his overwhelming sense of self-belief and his all-encompassing ego. His celebrity threatens to reach heights that heretofore have never been seen. Yet, deep down, he is plagued by a need for something more. His name is Blurr. We begin with a close-up of Blurr's face as he goes through some final checks. His crew informs him that the readings are good and they are prepped and ready. Blurr gives the order. He is disengaged and set for launch. We now see a full view of Blurr and his pit crew. They are ready for a race. We fast forward to a race already in progress. Blurr seems to have a substantial lead on the rest of his competitors, and easily wins the race in style. There's nothing Blurr enjoys more than the roar of the crowd. And that crowd clamors to get a glimpse of the king of the racetracks. A member of the pit crew now informs Blurr that he has yet again set a new track record. A voice from across the room tells him it won't last. A challenge this late in the game? Check the board's fast track. Who aced every championship this season? His pit crew reminds him that he did. You got that right, Parton. The pit member reminds him that his name is actually Piston. Blurr brushes it off like whatever. Piston mentions since they've all been working so hard, they should go out and celebrate tonight. Celebrate? That doesn't even begin to describe what we're going to be doing tonight. Piston seems surprised that he's being invited to go along with Blurr. Piston begins to suggest a place to go, and Blurr quickly cuts him off. There's only one place to go on a night like this. Fast Track gives the response: The Circle. Blurr states that the drinks are on him, as him and Fast Track quickly exit the room. Piston and the other crew members realize they'll never be allowed into the Circle. They decide to just clean up. As Blurr's personal transport arrives at the Circle, he is greeted with spotlights and a large crowd. And they are all there to see him. He is treated like a celebrity. Even the media is there, trying to get their questions in. One political question seems to catch his attention, but he doesn't understand it. The reporter asks him if he watches the news. Pal, I don't watch the news. I am the news. With one last egotistical wave to the crowd, Blurr enters the bar. As we head inside the Circle, we see what appears to be a pretty popular bar with a lot going on. Blurr and Fast Track seem to be having the time of their lives. Fast Track points out a couple of bots using a simultronic, reality inside reality. Blurr doesn't understand why anybody would want to run from a world like this. As they continue to order another round of Energon, the bartender wonders if they ever slow down. Slow? You insult us. Elsewhere, there is an explosion at one of the racetracks. We are now at the offices of a race promoter telling Blurr that the races are over. Blurr is furious at the news, but this order comes all the way from Zeta Prime himself. The news going around is that it has something to do with a terrorist. a threat to public safety. We now see Blurr standing alone back at the pits. Piston walks by on his way out from cleaning up. Blurr notices that Piston is taking his things with him. Piston says it's not about the races anymore. He hands Blurr a data card with the Autobot logo on it. This is where I'm going. Blurr mistakes this for some type of party invitation. Cybertron is changing, Blurr. Pretty soon, you'll need to choose a side. These are the good guys. They're here to help. Blurr says he doesn't need his help. The races might be over, but the parties are still raging. Piston wishes Blurr luck and leaves him to himself. Blurr now arrives back at the circle. No lights, no crowds. This is not the grand welcome he's accustomed to. It appears that now that the races are over, so are the parties. Blurr questions the barkeep about business. He's reminded that it is a war zone. Blurr then orders a bottle, walks over to an empty table, and proceeds to drink by himself. He even contemplates using the Simultronic.
Now, why would you want to do that?
A voice comes from across the room. It's Starscream, and he feels that Simultronic use is for the weak, not the strong. Starscream then begins to put on the charm and deliver some sort of sales pitch. Blurr really doesn't want to hear it. He's been belittled enough. Starscream says because they're scared of him, no doubt. Starscream proceeds to ask him what he really cares about. Racing. Starscream wonders if it's just the racing. No. The crowds. When I can feel them behind me. The lights. The roar. And that one moment. That one single moment when I know what I'm doing really matters. Starscream tells him what he really craves is power. He continues to tell him that he's single-minded and thinks only of himself. A quality that they do not look down upon.
What we believe is simple. Only the strong should rule. You are strong, Blurr. You're superior to everyone around you. I represent a group that exists to bring freedom to those like yourself.
As Starscream continues on, Blurr accuses him of being an Autobot. Starscream tosses a Decepticon data card down on the table.
My group could really use someone with your gifts, Blurr. Someone with your clarity. All those races, all those victories, and you still felt hollow, didn't you? Rule or serve. You'll know what to do.
Blurr decides to leave the bar, probably full of questions about his future. He transforms and races away. As Blurr is out driving around, he nearly gets hit by an explosion. Out of nowhere, Ironhide is on top of him, telling him to stay down. He's right in the middle of a street skirmish, and now they must retreat. As Blurr and the Autobots find cover, the Decepticons decide to make their leave, laying down heavy cover fire, making sure no one follows. 2 bots lost their life in this skirmish. Bots that Blurr knew well. Fast Track and Piston. Orion Pax claims to have met Piston once, briefly. It's a tragedy. Death to those who haven't chosen it. Orion notices Blurr is a racer. He says their kind is a special breed. Blurr has had enough. He's sick of bots telling him who and what he is. Cup tells Orion he's wasting his time, calls him a pampered, arrogant little upstart. Blurr takes offense to this and hurls an insult right back at him. Orion Pax is quick to jump in the middle before it turns into a full-blown argument. Orion can see Blurr's gift, the ability to process life and death decisions at lightning speed. Orion even admits to being envious of his confidence. Blurr's not buying it. If he's so wonderful, tell that to Piston. Tell that to the others he's ignored. There is a continuity error in this panel. Cup calls him Optimus, but he has yet to acquire that name. He should still be called Orion Pax. So Cup tells Orion Pax that it's time to go. They need to find a new way to save Prime. Orion says he has. Orion begins to tell Blurr that the Decepticons they were just fighting was an assassination team. Their target was Zeta Prime. Blurr doesn't really care. Orion continues to fill him in on details on the current situation. Orion knows they need to warn Zeta, but none of them can make it there fast enough. Blurr still doesn't seem to care, so now it's time for a little reverse psychology. Blurr states he likes his old life. Orion questions that statement. Orion asks if it was all the victories that kept him going, or was it the chance to inspire? He tells him you still have the chance to inspire. Blurr asks Orion who he is. He claims to be just a soldier. Blurr takes a look down at the data card Orion has given him, and then races away in a flash. Cup questions whether this was the correct move to make. We see Blurr racing towards his objective. What do you really care about? Racing. Just the racing? No. The crowds, when I can feel them behind me. The lights, the roar. And that one moment. That one single moment when I know what I'm doing really matters. This concludes our Spotlight story of the racer known as Blurr. That's it for this episode. Leave your thoughts and suggestions down in the comment box, and go ahead and click the thumbs up and subscribe buttons while you're at it. Be sure to tune in next time for another episode of Transformers Comics Decoded. This is Bartatron of the Cybertron Data Network signing off. Till all are one. Thanks for watching. See you next time.